Hi everybody, welcome back. Thanks for joining me for some yoga today. So today we're going to work on balance. I figure balance is something we can all use a little more of in our lives, especially around this busy holiday season. But today we're going to, not only work on our physical balance, but it can help a lot mentally as well. So if you have a block, like last time, it can be helpful. Definitely don't need it, but if you do have one, maybe feel free to go get that. You can also use like a book or a pillow, like anything really that you can just kind of create a little more height on the floor for. And we'll go ahead and begin seated. So you're welcome to sit flat on the ground or your chair, whatever you might be sitting on. I'm going to start on my knees just because that's what I feel like doing today, but you're welcome to sit however you'd like. Another way to use this block though, if you do want to sit on your knees, you can use one or two or more blocks and just place it in between those legs, kind of by those feet. And you can always sit on the block too. Sometimes it takes a little bit of that stretch out of the top of the ankle there. So just some options, but go ahead and take your time and find your space. Maybe try adjusting your weight side to side or maybe forward and back, beginning to maybe notice your sitting bones underneath you and where they're connected to whatever surface you might be sitting on. And as you find your seat today, you're welcome to continue to move if you're moving, or maybe you just come right to stillness. And feel free to close your eyes or maybe just find a downward gaze if you'd rather keep them open. But even if those eyes are closed, you might try turning that internal gaze downwards as well, just to help soften the area around the eyes. And then trying to find or maybe just notice how you're breathing. You don't need to change that breath at all, but just observing when you breathe. Noticing if you might feel any kind of movement throughout the torso or anywhere in the body as you breathe. We often tend to just breathe into our upper chest. So you might feel a little bit of movement there. You might not. Or you might choose to make that breath a little deeper, helping to expand the rib cage a little more, maybe stretch out those intercostal muscles. Or maybe you bring your focus down to your diaphragm, maybe letting the belly relax a little bit. So as you breathe in, it can expand. And then as you breathe out, you can even use your abdominal muscles to contract and help that diaphragm contract. So lots of options, just choosing or just observing how and when you're breathing, just for a few more moments here. And then if you'd like to bring some movement into the body, you can start by moving those shoulders, maybe circling one shoulder at a time, or you can move both shoulders at the same time. And you might try going both directions with those circles if you are circling them. Or you can even take that movement into the head and the neck. Maybe moving that head side to side. Or you might lift the chin up and down. Beginning to notice maybe little sensations of a stretch or of some movement in the body. And feel free to continue to move however you're moving, or maybe you work your way back to center. We're going to take that movement into the spine. So if you're seated, whether you're on your sitting bones or on your knees, maybe bringing those hands just to the tops of those legs. And let's take a full breath in, lifting that gaze up towards the ceiling. You might even lift the chin. And as we pause here, just breathing out and just letting those shoulders soften down the back. Breathing into the front of the torso, the heart center, the belly. Then on a breath out whenever you're ready, turning that gaze downwards. Maybe the chin gets a little closer to the collarbones. You might even draw the belly in towards the spine. And just letting the shoulders follow. So allowing them to soften, maybe they come forward a little bit. And feel free to stay in either direction, or you might move with your breath. As you breathe in, maybe lifting the gaze, lifting the heart. And then as you breathe out, turning that gaze downwards as the heart and the chest and the belly come in. As you lift, maybe feeling a little arc through the upper back. And then as you come forward and down, maybe you round through the back or through the spine. And you can continue to move with your breath, or you can pause and hold anywhere along the way. Let's just try 3 more breaths here. And then whenever you're ready, making your way back to that neutral spine. All right, now however you are seated, if you were on the block, maybe moving that block off to the side, maybe to the front of your space, in case you need it down the road. And then we're just gonna bring both feet over to one side. So you're kind of sitting on the hip. So as you do so, looking over towards those feet, maybe bring that same hand to the floor by those feet. And then the opposite arm, we're just gonna reach it up towards the ceiling, lifting up as high as we can, while still trying to keep the hip and the outer leg connected to the floor. Inhaling as we lift, and then as you exhale, lowering that hand down, and we're just gonna switch those arms. So we're gonna reach the opposite arm up, and as we do so, you might start to straighten this top leg, lifting onto that bottom leg, and you can even bring that knee in under the hip a little bit for more support. So just coming into like a kneeling side plank. So reaching up towards the ceiling again here with that opposite arm, and then on the breath out, we can lower those hips back down, bringing the feet back in, and then inhaling, opposite arm reaches up, maybe even overhead if you want to take that stretch a little further. And then exhaling as you lower that hand down, switching arms, extending that top leg, lifting onto the bottom knee, lifting the hips. And you can keep reaching up towards the ceiling, or you can reach that arm overhead, bringing your bicep close to your ear. And then exhaling as we lower, inhaling, opposite arm lifts, exhaling, lower, and inhaling, lift. Maybe try 2 more times in each direction, just moving at your own pace, possibly matching your movement to your breath. And then maybe the next time you come into that side plank, pausing there. So adjusting however you need to. If it bothers your wrist, you can always make a fist. Maybe bring that knee under the hip a little more for a little bit of support, and then actively try to reach your hips and your heart forward as you draw the shoulders back. So just lifting nice and tall. Now here, you can stay and hold, or you might find a little balance here by lifting that extended leg. It doesn't have to be very high off the floor, but you might try flexing through the foot. So you're reaching the heel out away from the body, and then lifting the leg up, and then maybe lowering it. So it can be a little lift, it can be a big lift. Paying attention to maybe that contraction through the muscle on that outer hip there and the glute. If it cramps up, feel free to just come on down, give it a minute, and then come back into it. Now maybe the next time you lift that leg, you might try to balance and pause here. And I know it's a lot through that arm that's on the floor, but try to press down into the floor like you're pushing the floor away from you. You might even try bending that top knee and reaching back towards your foot, or even to the foot. It's going to be different for each one of us. If the foot is in the hand, you might try pressing the foot into the hand a little further, helping draw that foot away from the body. Continue to reach the hips forward. 2 more breaths wherever you are, anywhere along the way. And then slowly lowering that foot, the hand, the hips, everything back down to the mat. Feel free to bring those legs out in front of you. Maybe move them around a little bit. All right, so as we're back here on our seat, if it's not so comfortable in that lower back to be seated flat on the mat, maybe try bending those knees and just keep the heels connected to the floor. And we're just gonna take a nice full breath in here. Just inhale, lifting nice and tall, drawing in and upwards through that core. And then on the breath out, you can bring those hands to the floor. We're just going to walk those hands forward, gently folding over those legs. So the knees can be a little bent, a lot bent, or you can straighten them out. Just folding over those legs. Try to stay nice and long through the spine as you reach the heart towards the feet. Drawing the feet back towards the heart. One more breath here. And then exhaling, letting it all go. We'll walk those hands back up. And then let's bring those feet around to the opposite side. So coming on to the other hip. Again, same hand, same side as those feet. It's going to come to the floor by those feet. And then as you feel ready, first try to feel that connection between the outer hip, the outer leg, as it stays connected to the floor or the mat. Trying to keep that connection grounding down as you inhale and lift up through the arm. You might even turn your gaze up with your hand if that feels okay on the neck. And then exhaling as you lower this hand down, and let's lift the opposite arm. Straightening out that top leg as you lift onto that bottom knee, lifting the hips and reaching all the way up towards the ceiling. Exhaling, maybe you lower the hips back down, bringing the feet in. Inhaling, opposite arm reaches up or maybe overhead, your choice. Exhaling as it lowers. Inhaling, that top leg extends, lifting up. You can always stay on the hips here and just reach if that works better for you. And then feel free to continue to move with that breath. Or maybe you pause for a few breaths somewhere along the way. Or maybe you're doing something totally different, and that's okay too. Listening to how or where the body wants to move. And then maybe the next time you come into that kneeling side plank, maybe we pause there, making any adjustments needed to help this feel a little more stable. Sometimes it just never feels stable, and that's okay too. But try to have that wrist under the shoulder, knee under the hip, gently reaching the hips and the heart forward with that top arm extended. Now maybe you stay here. You might just lift the toes or the heel an inch off the floor, or maybe a little bit higher. Totally up to you. Go ahead and move with that breath a few times if you're lifting that leg. This might feel different than the other side. You can come to a seat at any point if needed. Or you can pause with that leg lifted. Maybe you bend your knee and reach back toward your foot. So the foot might not come to the hand. Maybe you just reach back behind you and open the shoulder that way. Or if the foot is in the hand, gently drawing that foot away from the hips, away from the body. As the hips reach forward, the heart reaches forward. 2 more breaths. Noticing when you're breathing. And then very slowly, as you feel ready, letting that foot go. The hips can lower back down. Both hands come around to the front. Go ahead and bring those legs out in front. Maybe move those knees a little bit. And then once again, we're going to come into that forward fold. So feel free to bend those knees. As you inhale, you can just lift through the torso or you can lift through the arms. And then exhale, let's hinge at those hips, folding over those legs. Those hands can just walk down the floor. Maybe they come to the legs. Maybe sending that breath into the back side of the body, the back of the shoulders, the lower back, the back of the ribs, and then exhaling, trying to just let it go. Okay, very slowly up, maybe on a breath in, starting to roll back up to a seat, and we're going to make our way up to those feet. So taking your time to get there, finding your space standing here. Feel free to move around or walk around a little bit, however much you would like. But then as you're ready, just connecting both feet, all 10 toes, the heels with the ground underneath you. And for a moment, pretend like you're trying to pull the mat apart or the floor, trying to bring it out to the side. So really grounding down into those feet and then drawing those feet out, even though they're not actually moving. See if you can feel a little more engagement through the legs and through the glutes as you do so. And then maybe taking a big shoulder roll down the back here, possibly bringing those hands to your heart. All right, we're going to shift our weight into, maybe let's start with the left leg, but really your choice, whichever leg you'd start with. We'll do both sides. So as you bring that left foot to the floor, again, trying to continue to ground down, just like we did when we were on both feet. Almost like you were pulling that mat apart, but still grounding down into the big toe, pinky toe, the heel, drawing up through that knee, nice and strong through that standing leg. Sometimes our hip likes to take over and come out to the side. So if you notice that happening, just try to stand up a little taller, drawing in and up through that core. You know, it's a lot easier said than done. The opposite foot, let's try just first lifting the heel. Bringing the toes to the floor. The heel maybe comes right above the ankle there. And then our knee just pointing out to the side. And again here, just check in with that standing leg. What's it doing? How's it trying to compensate? What might we do a little differently to make this work a little better for us? Now I know for me, I'm already starting to feel a little shaky through the standing leg, even with the toes on the floor. So know you're always welcome to stay in balance here. You might notice I'm just constantly looking down. I'm not looking at the camera on purpose, but in balance, it really helps to find a spot to focus on. So I like to find a spot on the floor, usually just a few feet out in front of me. A spot that doesn't move, or maybe it's a spot on the wall, something that you can just gently gaze at. Helps to counteract the movement going on in our muscles, in the body. You're welcome to lift that foot a little bit higher if you'd like. Maybe it comes to the calf. You might even reach down for that ankle and help bring the foot up to the inner thigh. Really anywhere along the leg, maybe just not right against the knee joint. So as you find your balance here, it might not feel like you ever find balance here, but just continue to try. But if you want to try opening through these hips a little bit more, you might start to just hinge forward. So wherever this foot is, anywhere along the leg, start to just gently hinge forward at the hips. And as you do so, you might start to feel that hip open a bit more. That knee might come out to the side a little more. And again, it might not. But just giving that a try, finding that little hinge. It's just a very tiny hinge at the hips. And then if you feel that opening, just try to keep that hip open as you stand back up. You can always bring your hand to your leg too, just for some awareness on maybe where you're trying to focus on. Hands can come to the heart, or maybe you lift them up. Just creating your own tree, your own shape here. If you fall, if you're wobbly, that's perfect. That's what your body is doing, and that's okay. Just keep trying, keep coming back to it. Each day is going to be a little different when we try balancing. Let's try 3 more breaths here. I know we've been here for a long time, so always give yourself permission to come out of it at any point for any reason, even if it's different than what I'm doing. And then, if you haven't already, go ahead and let that foot come back to the floor and maybe move that standing leg around. You can roll out the ankle, maybe circle out the knee a little bit. All right. Okay, before trying the opposite side, let's take a little heart opener here. So you might bring your hands to that lower back. You can make fists. Maybe you have your palms flat on your back, fingers pointing up or down either direction. But just with one shoulder at a time, gently lift it up and then roll it all the way back. And then maybe try the other shoulder, bring it up and then all the way back. As those elbows are pointing behind you, you might try to draw those elbows towards one another as we start to turn the gaze upwards, lifting up through the heart. Maybe even try to lift up through the thighs as well. So strong through those legs to help support that lower back, engaging the glutes as we are gently pressing those hips forward. Inhaling, lifting a little higher through the chest. And then exhaling, slowly coming forward, releasing those hands, bending the knees, and folding all the way over those legs. Feel free to just gently sway side to side here. Or maybe you just move your head side to side or forward and back. And then nice deep bend in those knees as you feel ready. You can just slowly roll all the way back up to standing. Okay, let's try the other side on that balance. So shifting our weight into that opposite foot than we just did. I'm not going to try to say sides because we're probably all on different sides. But same thing, you might bring those hands to your heart. Find that connection with those fingertips. Sometimes just focusing on that still connection, just like focusing on our still gaze, can help to counteract our wobbly balance. Grounding down into each one of those toes, the big toe, pinky toe, the heel, as you're pushing down into the floor, lifting up through the pelvic floor, through the core, and then you might bring that heel right above the ankle. The toes can just rest on the floor, gently opening the knee out to the side, and maybe finding that spot to gaze at. Feel free to stay here. Or you can start to bring that foot a little higher up the leg. Wherever that foot is, continue to point that knee out to the side. Maybe try to bring your leg into your foot as the foot is coming into the leg. So a little counterbalance there. Pushing one into the other. If you'd like to open those hips a little more, you might start to hinge forward at the hip until you feel that knee being able to come out to the side a bit more. And then gently standing back up. This side is a little more wobbly for me. One side might feel different than the other. And feel free to keep those hands at your heart. Maybe they're on your hips or your leg, or maybe we lift them. Maybe they come out to the sides or up towards the ceiling. Wherever you would like. Finding your own tree. Checking in every now and then with that standing leg. Maybe how you can ground down a little more into the foot. Maybe drawing in through that hip, engaging through the thigh and the glute. About 2 more breaths. Coming in and out of it as much as you need to. And then as you're ready, go ahead and lower that foot down to the floor. Maybe move that standing leg around. Or both legs. You can walk it out a little bit, shake it out. And then go ahead and come to the front of your space here. All right, as we breathe in, let's go ahead and lift those arms all the way up nice and tall. And then on the breath out, finding our forward fold. So just hinging at those hips. Once again, let's inhale about halfway. And then as we exhale, folding over those legs. Maybe bringing both hands to the floor out in front of your feet, or you can bring your hands to your block out in front of your foot. And let's step our left foot to the back. Or maybe choosing, just switching those legs. So whichever foot you were just balancing on, maybe step that foot to the back. All right, so we've got our hands out in front on the floor or the block. Maybe bring them slightly out in front even more. So that weight is really in this front leg. Just a little bit of weight in that back leg. We're slowly going to start to lift that back leg off the mat. Again, doesn't have to be very high. You can just play around with lifting and lowering those toes, keeping that standing knee bent. Or you might lift that heel up towards the ceiling. Just starting to fold over that front leg. Keeping a soft bend in that knee. Lowering that back foot down if you need to. Maybe lifting it a little bit higher. Maybe you play around with movement here with that lifted leg. Now feel free to keep both hands on the block. Or a little challenge, you might try lifting those hands off the block and bringing them to your heart. Maybe one hand stays down, maybe alternate. Whatever works for you here, challenging your balance. Maybe try dropping that left hip a little more to keep those hips square. 2 more breaths, however you are balancing. And then when you feel ready, go ahead and step those feet alongside one another, possibly rolling back up to standing. We'll shake out those legs, moving it around a little bit. Okay, let's bring those hands to our lower back once again, finding that little upper back bend like we did before. Inhaling as we start to turn the gaze upwards. Exhaling as the shoulders draw down, elbows reaching towards one another. Maybe try to lift up through the knees, engaging through the glutes. Continuing to breathe. One more full breath here. And then exhaling as we slowly come forward, letting those hands come out in front and down to the floor, back to that forward fold. Let's inhale about halfway lift. Hands can come to the block or the floor. Exhaling as we step the opposite foot to the back. All right, so you come into almost like a runner's lunge here. Starting to shift that weight even more into that front foot, coming onto those back toes. You might start to lift those back toes a little bit or a lot of it. Finding a little balance here that works for you. If you're using a block, you can try any height of the block that works for you there. You might keep both hands on the block. Maybe you try lifting one hand or both. Bringing them to your heart. Maybe you play around with some movement with that back leg. Just using this time to challenge your balance. Maybe try something different, trying something new. If that leg is lifted, maybe try dropping that right hip a little bit. 2 more breaths here. And then as you feel ready, both legs, both feet can come to the floor. And we're just going to bend those knees, dropping those hips. Let's go ahead and have a seat. Go ahead and have a seat all the way down on the mat. Feel free to move those legs around a little bit here. We're going to come into one more little forward fold, just opening through the back of those legs. So maybe bending those knees. And this time, as we start to fold forward, trying to wrap those arms around the legs like you're giving yourself a big hug. So hands can come to forearms or elbows. And then as we inhale, try sitting up a little bit taller, creating a long spine. And then on the breath out, gently, you can let those heels slide forward, or maybe you kind of inch them forward one at a time. Just taking that forward fold a little bit deeper as we bring that chest a little closer to the thighs. Pausing whenever you start to feel maybe that sensation of a stretch through the back of the legs, or maybe even through the lower back. This is really more of a back stretch than a leg stretch here, unless those legs are all the way straight. By just softening the chin down towards the collarbone. Taking about 2 more breaths. And then as you feel ready, maybe uncrossing those arms, bringing hands to the floor so you can help yourself sit all the way back up. And then we're just going to lower all the way down onto our backs. So just taking your time to get there, and feel free to just bring those feet to the floor, the knees pointing up towards the ceiling, and just allowing that lower back to rest on the mat for a moment. And then maybe walking those feet out a little wider than those hips. You might start to move both knees over to one side and then up and over to the other side. Just moving those knees back and forth. Maybe noticing that lower back or the sides of the hips. And then feel free to bring those knees back up to center. And if there's any other stretches or movements you feel the body might need today, feel free to take those. Otherwise, we might just extend those legs out in front, maybe bringing those arms along those sides and coming into Shavasana. But Shavasana, it just means resting pose. So you definitely don't need to stay on the back with the legs extended. You can always keep your feet on the floor. You can maybe roll onto one side. You can even have a seat wherever you feel comfortable is just right for your Shavasana. So those are just some options for you, but feel free to adjust or modify to find your space here. And as you find your space, once again, trying to notice the surface beneath you, where your body is connected to that surface, whether it's your yoga mat or the floor or a chair. As we pause here, the mind is going to wander. It's just what it does best. When you notice, though, that you're being kind of carried away in thought, just gently guiding it back to the body, whether that's through the breath or maybe through that connection of your body and the ground beneath it. Or maybe you choose to focus on a specific thought or mantra. And I will just stop talking for about a minute here, and then I will bring you out of it. But just know at any point you can come out of it for any reason. So you might bring your awareness back to your breath. Or maybe back to the body by bringing little movements back in, maybe starting with the fingers and the toes, or you can roll out the wrists and the ankles. And feel free to reach those arms up overhead, maybe taking a big stretch from fingertip to toe. You might draw those knees in towards the chest, maybe even wrapping your arms around your legs. Just appreciating this time that you took for yourself today. And then, as you feel ready, helping yourself up to a seat, whether that's through rolling over to one side or you can rock and roll your way up. And as you find your space, feel free to take your time to do so, but I'll just leave you here with a few more breaths. So finishing that next breath out, and then maybe on a breath in, you might breathe in through the nose, maybe lifting those arms, and then exhaling back out through the nose. And then just taking another cleansing breath back in through the nose, And out through the mouth, just sigh it out. Thank you for joining me today. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, wonderful week, and holiday season ahead of you. Namaste.